There comes a moment in life when people believe discipline is the golden key, the magic ingredient to success. You've heard it: wake up at 5 a.m., grind every day, stick to routines, never miss a workout, never skip a task. And yes, discipline matters. It builds structure, it builds consistency, it builds muscle. But let me tell you something bold today: discipline on its own is useless. Because discipline is just a tool, and a tool without the right direction is nothing but wasted energy. You can wake up at 5 a.m. every single day, but if your heart, your vision, your deeper why is not there, then all you've got is a well-organized life leading to nowhere. Discipline is not the engine of success, it's the fuel. And fuel without a destination is just spilled gasoline. What makes discipline powerful, unstoppable, and meaningful is purpose. We often glorify discipline as the ultimate secret of success. People praise the early risers, the workaholics, the relentless grinders who never skip a step, never miss a day, never break their routine. And there's truth in it. Discipline matters. But here's what's rarely spoken: discipline without purpose eventually becomes a prison. It becomes chains that weigh you down instead of wings that lift you up. When you discipline yourself to wake up early, study longer, work harder, or exercise daily without attaching those actions to a greater why, you begin to feel like a robot running through motions that have lost meaning. And when life feels meaningless, burnout isn't just possible, it's inevitable. Think about it. You can force yourself into routines. You can schedule every hour of your day. You can push yourself to meet deadlines and goals. But if those goals don't speak to your heart, if those routines don't align with what truly matters to you, then you are simply moving without progress, working without fulfillment, and living without fire. That is why so many people quit even after doing everything right. They followed all the productivity hacks, the motivational advice, the strict schedules, but they eventually felt empty inside. And when emptiness replaces enthusiasm, the weight of discipline turns heavy, crushing, unbearable. Burnout doesn't come because people are lazy. Burnout comes because people are disconnected. They are pouring energy into something that doesn't fuel them back. Imagine trying to fill a bucket that has holes in the bottom. No matter how much water you pour, it will always drain out. That's what discipline without purpose feels like. You are pouring out your energy day after day, but it doesn't stay, it doesn't build, because there is no deeper meaning holding it together. Now, contrast that with someone who has purpose. They may be just as disciplined. Maybe they wake up at the same time, follow similar routines, but everything feels different. They aren't waking up early just for the sake of being productive. They're waking up because their dream calls them out of bed. They aren't grinding late into the night just to tick boxes. They're doing it because they see a vision so compelling it makes fatigue seem small. When you have a purpose, discipline doesn't drain you, it sustains you. Without purpose, discipline is a desert. With purpose, discipline becomes a well of life. This is why so many people who rely on discipline alone lose momentum. At first, discipline feels exciting. It feels like progress. You get that rush from sticking to your new habit, that pride from being consistent. But over time, without a larger reason, the novelty wears off, the grind feels heavier. And eventually, you stop asking, how do I stay disciplined? And start asking, what's the point? That's the silent killer of motivation, the absence of purpose. Purpose gives you a reason to endure. It gives context to the pain. Without purpose, pain is just suffering. With purpose, pain is an investment. Think about athletes training for championships. Their discipline is brutal. Hours of practice, strict diets, constant sacrifice. If they didn't have the vision of victory, the dream of being a champion, no human being could endure that level of discipline. But because they have purpose, the same grueling process that would break others fuels them instead. Their bodies may be tired, but their spirits are on fire. And here's the truth: most people don't quit because they lack discipline. They quit because their discipline wasn't attached to something that lit their soul. You can only push yourself for so long before your heart demands meaning. And if you don't find that meaning, no amount of self-control, no amount of scheduling, no amount of grind will save you from collapse. That's why so many high achievers suddenly fall apart. They had the discipline, but they never paused to ask, why am I really doing this? So understand this: discipline is not the ultimate answer. It's important, but it's incomplete. Without purpose, discipline is like running on a treadmill, exhausting, repetitive, and ultimately you're going nowhere. But when you attach purpose, the same discipline becomes a vehicle, a bridge that carries you across challenges toward the life you actually want. Burnout is not a sign you're weak. It's a sign you've been living too long with discipline that isn't tied to purpose. The fire went out, and discipline alone wasn't enough to keep you warm. So yes, discipline matters, but discipline without purpose is useless. Discipline is like fuel. It is energy. It is raw power. But fuel by itself does nothing. You can fill a car with the most expensive gasoline, but if there's no map, no destination, no driver who knows where to go, the car just sits there. Or worse, it starts moving in circles, wasting energy, burning fuel, but never truly arriving anywhere meaningful. That's exactly how discipline works when it's not anchored in purpose. It is movement without meaning, action without achievement. Purpose is the compass that gives discipline direction. Every single day, countless people discipline themselves to wake up early, to push harder, to check off their to-do lists. They are busy, but they are not fulfilled. They are consistent, but they are not progressing. Why? Because discipline without a target is just motion, not momentum. Purpose is what turns daily discipline into a strategy for growth. It ensures that every ounce of effort you put in takes you closer to something that matters, rather than just draining your energy into meaningless routines. Think about an archer. Discipline is the strength in their arms, the steady breath, the focused eyes. But without a target, what good is the bow? What good is the arrow? Purpose is the bullseye. It's what makes the practice worthwhile. It's what gives the discipline context. Otherwise, you're just firing arrows into the air, hoping they land somewhere useful. Too many people live this way, working hard, disciplining themselves, but lacking clarity of purpose. And so, years later, they realize they climbed the wrong mountain. They built a ladder leaning against the wrong wall. But when you have purpose, suddenly discipline becomes laser focused. You don't just wake up early. You wake up early because you're building something extraordinary. You don't just work long hours. You work long hours because your vision demands it. You don't just sacrifice distractions. You do it joyfully because you know exactly what those sacrifices are protecting. Purpose takes every drop of discipline and channels it like a river into a single powerful direction. And that is how breakthroughs happen. Let's be real, discipline alone can feel exhausting. But discipline aligned with purpose feels energizing. That's why some people can endure hardships that others can't. They're not superhuman, they're purpose-driven. Take someone training for a marathon. To most people, running for hours every day sounds miserable. The blisters, the sore muscles, the endless miles, why would anyone put themselves through that? But to the runner who has a purpose, whether it's crossing that finish line, raising money for a cause, or proving something to themselves, those same painful miles become meaningful. Discipline has direction, and therefore it becomes bearable, even joyful. This is why clarity of purpose is the most powerful thing you can ever give yourself. Once you know why you're doing something, discipline no longer feels like a burden. It feels like alignment. You stop fighting against yourself. You stop resisting the routines, the habits, the sacrifices, because you see how they connect to your vision. Purpose turns I have to into I get to. Instead of saying, I have to wake up early, you say, I get to wake up early because I'm chasing my dream. Instead of saying, I have to study, you say, I get to study because I'm preparing myself for the life I've chosen. That simple shift changes everything. And here's the beauty of it. When discipline has purpose, it creates momentum. Purpose clarifies priorities. It eliminates distractions. It gives you the ability to say no without guilt because you know exactly what you're saying. Yes. 2, it sharpens your focus, increases your resilience, and makes every disciplined action a stepping stone toward a future that excites you. Without purpose, every day feels like a grind. With purpose, every day feels like progress. So understand this, your discipline is only as powerful as the purpose behind it. A disciplined life without a meaningful direction is just well-organized misery. But when discipline and purpose join forces, they create unstoppable momentum. Purpose is what transforms your routines into rituals of greatness. Purpose is what makes your discipline not just about surviving the day, but about creating a future worth waking up for. Life is not without struggle. Struggle is the price of progress. Every dream requires sacrifice, every goal demands effort, and every meaningful journey comes with obstacles. But here's the truth, struggle on its own can feel like suffering. It can feel heavy, endless, and discouraging. And that's why most people quit when things get hard. They see the pain, but not the point. Yet when you have clarity of purpose, something magical happens. The same struggle that breaks others begins to fuel you. What once felt like suffering transforms into passion And suddenly the very thing that made you want to quit becomes the reason you keep going. Think about it, passion is not born out of comfort. Passion is born out of clarity. When you know exactly why you're doing something, the late nights don't feel like torture, they feel like an investment. The early mornings don't feel like punishment, they feel like privilege. The sacrifices don't feel like loss, they feel like alignment. Clarity of purpose redefines the meaning of struggle. Without it, the grind feels meaningless. With it, the grind feels sacred. Look at anyone who has ever achieved greatness. They struggled, they failed, they fell. But they kept getting back up because their purpose was crystal clear. Ask a parent why they work long hours, sacrifice luxuries, and push themselves beyond exhaustion. They don't say it's because they love suffering. They do it because their purpose, their children, their family, is so clear that every sacrifice feels worth it. That is the power of clarity. It turns heavy burdens into acts of love, discipline into devotion, and challenges into chapters of a bigger story. The truth is, most people don't lack strength, they lack clarity. When you're unclear about why you're doing something, every little obstacle feels overwhelming. But when your purpose is clear, you develop resilience that shocks even yourself. The same storm that drowns others becomes your proving ground. Why? Because you don't just see the struggle, you see beyond it. You see what the struggle is building, what it's shaping, what it's preparing you for. That vision turns pain into passion. Think about an athlete preparing for the Olympics. The training is brutal. The diet is strict. The sacrifices are relentless. If you only looked at the process, you'd think it was misery. But when you ask them why they do it, their eyes light up. They talk about standing on that podium, hearing their anthem, representing their country. That's clarity of purpose. And that clarity transforms the pain of training into the passion for victory. Without that vision, no amount of discipline would sustain them. With that vision, they can endure almost anything. Now apply this to your own life, whatever struggle you're in. Whether it's building a business, pursuing education, working through financial hardship, or striving for personal growth, it will never feel worth it unless your purpose is clear. Vague goals don't create passion. Clear goals do. A foggy reason won't carry you through tough days, but a precise vision will. When you know exactly what you're fighting for, you stop asking, why is this so hard? And start declaring, this is worth it. The clarity also creates passion because it connects the dots between where you are and where you want to be. Struggle without context feels endless, but struggle with context feels like progress. Imagine climbing a mountain blindfolded. Every step feels confusing, exhausting, and hopeless. But take off the blindfold, see the peak, and suddenly every step, no matter how hard, fills you with fire because you know you're getting closer. That's what clarity of purpose does. It removes the blindfold so that your struggles become meaningful steps instead of meaningless pain. And here's the most liberating part. When you have clarity of purpose, struggle no longer defines you. It refines you. Instead of seeing obstacles as setbacks, you see them as opportunities to grow stronger, to deepen your passion, to prove your commitment. That mindset shift is everything. Passion doesn't erase the pain, it transforms how you interpret it. What once felt like chains now feels like wings. What once felt like sacrifice now feels like service. What once felt like hardship now feels like honor. So never fear the struggle, fear the lack of clarity. Because clarity is the lens that changes everything. With it, your struggles become fuel for passion. Without it, your struggles will drain you until you quit. The difference between those who give up and those who rise isn't that one has fewer challenges, it's that one has clearer purpose. And clarity of purpose is the secret that transforms struggle into passion. Most people think discipline is about sheer willpower. They believe you have to wake up every morning and force yourself into routines, force yourself into habits, force yourself into doing the things you don't want to do. That's why discipline feels so hard to so many people, because they see it as a battle against themselves. But the truth is, discipline doesn't have to feel like a daily war. It only feels that way when it's disconnected from meaning. When your discipline is tied to something that deeply matters to you, it stops being forced. It starts being natural. Think about it. You never have to remind someone in love to talk to their partner. You never have to discipline a passionate artist to paint. You never have to discipline a musician who loves music to pick up their instrument. Why? Because their actions are fueled by meaning. Their discipline is not imposed from the outside, it's pulled from within. That's the difference between discipline that drains you and discipline that drives you. When you connect your daily actions to a meaningful purpose, the resistance melts away. What used to feel like obligation starts to feel like devotion. This is why so many people struggle to stay consistent. It's not because they're lazy. It's not because they lack self-control. It's because they haven't tied their discipline to meaning. They're trying to push themselves with rules, routines, and restrictions instead of pulling themselves forward with purpose, vision, and meaning. When you push yourself, you eventually get tired. But when something pulls you, when your purpose pulls you, the effort feels almost effortless. Let's take an example. Imagine two people going to the gym. One goes because they think they should. They want to look better, they want to be healthier, but the reason is vague. Every workout feels like a chore. Every repetition feels heavy, and skipping a day feels tempting. That's discipline without deep meaning. Now imagine the other person. They go to the gym because their father died of heart disease, and they've promised themselves they'll live long and strong for their children. For them, every workout is an act of love. Every repetition is a promise kept. Every drop of sweat is connected to something bigger. Same gym, same workout, same discipline. But one feels like punishment and the other feels like purpose. This is why you must stop trying to fight discipline like it's an enemy. Instead, connect it to meaning so it becomes your ally. When you know what your actions stand for, you don't wake up with dread, you wake up with determination. You don't fight yourself to stay consistent, you feel compelled to. Meaning makes discipline flow naturally. Think about students who study late into the night, if they're doing it just because they're supposed to. Burnout is inevitable. But if they're studying because they have a dream to become a doctor, an engineer, a leader, because they see the life that education will unlock, suddenly the same late night struggle becomes a badge of honor. The discipline no longer feels like suffering, it feels like stepping closer to destiny. The truth is, meaning makes habits sustainable. Willpower runs out, motivation fades, but meaning lasts. Meaning is what keeps you steady when everything else gets shaky. It's what allows you to say no to distractions without hesitation because you're saying yes to something better. It's what transforms ordinary routines into extraordinary rituals. And here's the real beauty. When your discipline is connected to meaning, you stop needing external rewards. You stop waiting for applause, recognition, or validation because the act itself becomes rewarding. Waking up early, working late, saying no to comfort, all of it feels worth it because you know exactly why you're doing it. That internal satisfaction is stronger than any external motivation. This is why discipline feels impossible for some and effortless for others. It's not that one group is stronger or smarter. It's that one group has found meaning. They don't wake up and ask, how do I force myself today? They wake up and say, how could I not? That shift changes everything. So here's the truth. When discipline is rooted in meaning, it becomes less about self-control and more about self-expression. You don't feel like you're restricting yourself. You feel like you're living in alignment with who you are and what you want. And that alignment doesn't just make discipline easier, it makes it natural. Greatness has never been built by accident. No one stumbles into a legendary life. No one drifts their way into impact. Greatness is built step by step, day by day, through discipline. But not just any discipline, the kind of discipline that is anchored in purpose. Because discipline without purpose creates exhaustion, but discipline with purpose creates excellence. Discipline without purpose is just repetition, but discipline with purpose is transformation. Look at history. Every person we admire, every leader we celebrate, every innovator who changed the world, none of them were simply disciplined. Plenty of people are disciplined. Millions wake up early, millions work hard, millions keep routines. What separated the great ones from the rest was that their discipline served something bigger than themselves. Their purpose made their discipline meaningful, and that meaning made their discipline unstoppable. Think about someone like a world-class surgeon. Their discipline is incredible. Years of school, endless nights of study, countless hours in practice. But it's not discipline alone that makes them great. It's the purpose behind that discipline saving lives, healing people, making a difference. Without that purpose, the grind of medical training would crush anyone. But with that purpose, the grind becomes a pathway to greatness. The same is true in every field. Greatness doesn't come from discipline for discipline's sake. Greatness comes when discipline and purpose collide. Purpose gives you the endurance to keep going when it hurts, the resilience to rise when you fall, the passion to stay committed when others quit. Purpose makes your discipline unstoppable because it ties every action, every sacrifice, every routine to something sacred. Here's the truth most people don't want to hear: greatness is not glamorous. Greatness is hidden in the small, consistent actions that no one applauds. It's in the hours of practice before the performance. It's in the quiet mornings of preparation before the breakthrough. It's in the sacrifices you make when no one is watching. And it's in those moments that discipline matters most. But again, discipline without purpose eventually collapses. Discipline anchored in purpose is what allows you to sustain those small, unseen acts long enough for them to create extraordinary results. When your discipline is rooted in purpose, it doesn't just build success, it builds character. It molds you into someone greater than you were yesterday. It shapes your identity. You stop seeing discipline as something you do, and you start seeing it as who you are. And that is when greatness is born, not when you achieve a title, not when you reach a milestone, but when you become the kind of person who lives with purpose-driven discipline every single day. Greatness also requires consistency. And consistency is only possible when you have a reason deep enough to keep showing up. Anyone can be disciplined for a week. Anyone can sacrifice for a month. But greatness takes years of sustained commitment. Without purpose, no one lasts that long. But with purpose, people will dedicate their entire lives. Purpose is the anchor that keeps you steady through storms, through setbacks, through seasons when results seem invisible. Purpose whispers to you in the silence, keep going. It matters. And when you listen to that whisper, you build greatness brick by brick. The world doesn't reward the person who works the hardest once. It rewards the person who stays consistent with their discipline for years because their purpose never wavered. That is why greatness isn't reserved for the most talented, the smartest, or the luckiest. Greatness belongs to those who anchor their discipline in something unshakable. And here's what's powerful: when you live this way, your greatness doesn't just serve you, it serves others. Your purpose-driven discipline becomes an example, an inspiration, a light for people around you. Your greatness lifts others higher. That's why the pursuit of greatness is never selfish when it's anchored in purpose. It becomes a gift to the world. So never underestimate the combination of discipline and purpose. Alone, each is powerful, but together they are unstoppable. That's the formula for greatness. Not just discipline, not just purpose, but discipline anchored in purpose. Because when your habits are fueled by meaning, when your actions are tied to vision, when your sacrifices are connected to something bigger, you don't just create results, you create legacy. So here's the truth we cannot ignore: discipline alone is not enough. Discipline without purpose is empty. Discipline without vision is exhausting. Discipline without meaning is useless. But when you anchor your discipline in purpose, everything changes. Struggle becomes passion, sacrifice becomes progress, habits become identity, and ordinary effort becomes extraordinary greatness. The world does not need more people who simply work hard. The world needs more people who work hard for something that matters. It needs people whose discipline is driven by love, by vision, by calling. That is where true success is born. That is where impact is made. That is where greatness lives. So I challenge you today, don't just discipline your time, discipline it toward your dream. Don't just discipline your energy. Discipline it toward your vision. Don't just discipline your actions, discipline them toward your purpose. Because the moment your discipline is aligned with meaning, you will no longer ask, how do I stay motivated? You will rise each day knowing, this is who I am, and this is what I was made for. And when you live like that, discipline is no longer a burden, it is your power. Purpose is no longer a distant idea, it is your fire. And together, they don't just build success, they build a life of greatness.